Hey, that's pretty good.
Hey viewers, just want to say thanks so much for all the views and subscriptions I got on my first video. 120 is way more than I was expecting on my first video. This might have been in part to King Sprach liking and commenting on it, which probably showed up in his activity feed. So thanks so much for that, King Sprach. As I told you in my reply, I'm a huge fan of yours. Anyways, let's get to the stories. A couple years ago, I found myself in a very disturbing situation. I was getting off work at my student internship in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it had been snowing all day. Now, for all you guys who live in the South, you know it's a big deal when it even calls for snow, and grocery stores are raided the night before. I had decided to go and get some groceries to enjoy with my girlfriend, now wife, since the mayhem had ended and only people like me who had trucks or all-terrain vehicles could get around. I went into Walmart and got the groceries I needed and started on my way back to the truck. It had started to snow harder and there was already about 5 to 7 inches on the ground, and it was about 12 in the afternoon. I was daydreaming about sledding and watching movies the next couple of days with my girlfriend. Just then, I almost reached my truck. I was jolted back by the act of somebody grabbing my arm. As I turned around, I saw it was an older looking lady who was maybe 5'6". She asked me if I had any cigarettes, and I don't smoke, so I told her I didn't. And so I turned back to my truck. Again, she gently tugged on my arm, and then she told me that she had just gotten here from Alabama on a bus with her great-granddaughter and her dog, and she was here for a breast cancer treatment and wanted money for a hotel. Again, I honestly told her I had no money on me, which I purposefully do because I don't like donating to people's drug habits, and would rather just get people food myself if that's what they really need. At this point, she asked, "Do you know the area well?" Wanting to get out of the situation, I said no, I didn't, which was a total lie, thinking she'd leave me alone now. Then she asked me, "Oh, okay, well, since the weather is so bad, will you drive me to my hotel so I can meet up with my granddaughter and her dog who are at the hotel lobby waiting?" "It's right up the road here, I can show you." I was a Christian, and I was always taught to help people out. So even though everything at this moment told me to deny this woman again, I told her sure, since I was raised by the rule, never judge a book by its cover. Plus, I was a male of 6 feet. I figured I could take her if things got dicey. So she jumped into my truck, and the next thing I know, she's smoking a cigarette in my truck, and I told her to politely please put it out. Being nervous, I missed my first red flag when she asked me for a cigarette, since she obviously had some. She obliged and threw the cigarette out the window to my dismay. So we started driving up the road towards the hotel, at which I was on high alert. I noticed her fumbling through her purse, searching for something and looking out the corner of her eye at me, at which I told her, "Just so you know, I have a gun in my truck, so don't try anything crazy." Now, I did have a gun, but it was a shotgun that I neglected to get out of my back seat a couple of days earlier, and in reality, this would do me no good if she pulled a gun on me at this moment. At this, she stopped messing around in her purse and pulled out her cell phone in her pocket. She looked at me and said, "Actually, do you mind taking a detour? I need to pick up some money from some friends." Okay, at this point, red flags were firing off in my head, but again, never judge a book by its cover kept running through my mind. So I told her that it was fine, but we needed to make it quick because I needed to make it home. At that moment, she dialed someone on the phone and said, "Yeah, this guy is coming over to bring me to get the stuff. You ready?" At that point, I asked her if I could talk to this person. When I answered the phone, a man who sounded like he's been chain smoking since birth said,
"Hello?"
I started asking him questions like, "What's your name?" and asked him if he indeed knew of any hotels nearby. He seemed to stumble over his words and then said he had to go. At this point, I should have gotten a clue and kicked her out of the car, especially after watching so many horror movies. This is where the person goes against their gut and pays badly for it. But for fear of her actually telling the truth and me feeling like a terrible person, I decided to go along. At this point, we turned down the street and saw a cop car sitting there off to the side. I wanted to go drop her off with the cop, but I would feel terrible if she was actually telling the truth. So I passed the cop, and at this point, with a weird, eerie smile on her face, she said, "Glad to know he's there. I feel safe." Now, as we entered the apartment complex, I saw how run down it was. It looked like a place where heavy drug trafficking was going on. This was just a very unsettling place, even during the snowstorm. As I parked outside the place she said was her friend's, she said, "Okay, I'll go get the guy and he'll be back." At this, I was very unsettled by everything. Things just did not seem right. She saw my facial expression of wanting to just get the heck out of Dodge, and to this she sneered at me, saying something along the lines of being a terrible person if I left her there, in this weather especially. At this, I got mad. After all, I went out of my way to help her. As I waited, I started to think about how things could get worse. What if she brings a gun or something like that? At that moment, I saw 3 guys coming towards my truck. I realized things were not right. She had set me up to rob me or something because these guys were big and one of them had something behind his back I couldn't see. At this moment, I pulled into reverse and took off. Thank God for 4-wheel drive. I looked back to one of them chasing me and to see what was hidden behind the guy's back. It was a crowbar. I don't know what would have happened, but looking back, I see how blind and dumb I was to this. There was no hotel anywhere close to the area I was in. The nearest hotel or motel was around 20 minutes away. Had I waited for the guys to get to my truck, they probably would have beaten me or robbed me, or worse. I thank God every day after I escaped, and I was able to get married until this event. After that, I have never been to that Walmart again, or that area for that matter. A couple of months later, I told a coworker about the story, and he told me that a year ago, the same lady tried to do the same thing to him, but he declined altogether. Pretty smart move on his part in retrospect. So horrible lady who lied about having breast cancer to trick people into awful things, I hope you get what's coming to you, and let's never meet again. So to all, be careful who you help out, because sometimes it'll be someone who will take advantage of you. Or worse. This all happened when I was 5 years old. It has been traumatizing me ever since. I've never told anyone about this up until now. Up until I was in kindergarten, my mom used to put me in daycares or neighbors' houses so that she and dad could go to work. One summer, my mom asked this lady in our development to babysit me for the summer while she went to work. I don't know what possessed my mom to choose this lady. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was pure stupidity. Maybe it was a combination of both. But either way, my mom entrusted this lady with me for most of the day. This lady had no business being around children, let alone being responsible for them. I honestly believe this lady was an alcoholic. Mainly because she always looked sick and tired. Her eyes were always red and her breath smelled like puke every time she talked. The worst thing, however, was that she was almost never around, basically leaving me unsupervised for several hours. The lady would only be there when my mom would drop me off or pick me up. Otherwise, the lady was locked in her bedroom. Once she had me clean her bedroom as punishment for breaking a few of her picture frames. I didn't actually break them, but whatever. I walked into her bedroom only to find several glass bottles strewn all over the floor. The lady had 2 nieces who were staying with her for the summer. I don't remember their names, nor were they sisters or cousins, but I do remember their ages. The younger one was around 8 years old. The older one was around 11 years old. The nieces were the most horrible children I have ever had the misfortune of meeting. The younger niece was a disgusting and rude brat. The older niece was a manipulative liar and a complete sadist. When I first met them, I was friendly with them. At first they were friendly back, but things began to change. The older niece began bullying me first. The younger one soon joined in. First it was name-calling, then it was teasing, then it was stealing, then blaming things on me. In just a week, things had escalated to the point where both nieces began to physically abuse me. The younger niece liked to dump dirt on me and put food in my head and pull on my hair. She, along with the older niece, once set my hair on fire. She also liked to steal my lunches, spit on my food, pee on the floors, break stuff, and blame it on me. The older niece liked to throw glass bottles at me. She once put broken glass in my cereal and almost tricked me into eating it. When I asked her why she did that, she said, well, she wanted to see what would happen if I ate it. The older niece also liked to push me into walls and furniture and drag me by the hair just so that she could beat me up. I couldn't fight her because she was much bigger than me, plus the younger niece would just join in and beat me up as well. Every day I would come home with bruises, cuts, and stuff in my hair. My nights were spent trying to pick the glass out of my skin, bandage my cuts, and wash out whatever stuff was thrown onto my head that day. My parents never once noticed, not even when the bruises or cuts were on my face or arms. I also began to experience panic attacks at this point. Every morning I would wake up and cry hysterically, knowing I would have to go to that damn house and be stuck with those nieces all day long. It was only then that my mother finally noticed something was a little off. One morning, my mom asked me why I hated going to that house. I told her how the girls were beating me up and throwing stuff in my hair. I showed her cuts and bruises, as well as the burn marks when they set my ponytail on fire. My mom took off work that day and drove to their house to confront the lady and her nieces. She showed the lady my bruises and cuts and demanded an explanation. The lady called the nieces over and had them tell my mother their side of the story. The nieces claimed that I was hurting myself and breaking things to get them in trouble, that they didn't know why I hated them so much, that they still wanted to be friends. Believe it or not, my mom believed them and got angry at me for lying, so to speak. So she made me apologize to the nieces and the lady for my behavior. She then took me home and spanked me. From that day forward, my mom ignored whatever state I was in when she picked me up, no matter how bruised or cut up I was. All because she assumed I was doing it for attention. So I continued to endure this endless abuse. And the nieces continued to get away with all of it. I wanted to get away. I wanted to leave in any way I could. I just wanted my mom to believe me. But I knew I couldn't make her. The only thing I could do was, well, nothing. So I began to zone out and pretty much become numb. Eventually I got so numb I practically felt nothing. By late summer I had been subjected to 3 months of this. This was also around the time when the lady set up a swimming pool. One day the lady decided to allow the 3 of us to use her swimming pool. Probably that's so we wouldn't bother her anymore. She asked my mom one morning if I'd like to bring a bathing suit so I could swim in the pool. My mom told the lady I didn't know how to swim yet, so she wasn't sure if I should go. The lady assured my mom that she would supervise me and make sure I stayed in the shallow end. So the next day, my mom had me pack my bathing suit and brought me to the house. For once in a long time, I felt optimistic and happy. The thought of a swimming pool excited me a bit, and I looked forward to it, even with those nieces involved. When I got there, the lady told me to change in my bathing suit and meet her and the nieces by the pool. When I got there, the lady said I had to listen to some rules before I went in. She told me I had to stay in the shallow end of the pool. She also told the girls that I didn't know how to swim and that I wasn't allowed near the deep end with them. She then went inside to quote-unquote make a phone call and left, thus leaving me and the girls unattended. When she was gone, the nieces walked to the deep end of the pool, but strangely didn't jump in. Instead, they sat at the edge of the pool. I went to the shallow end of the pool and played by myself. Surprisingly, they left me alone for about 15 minutes. I was splashing the water, blowing bubbles, and just having a great time. For the first time in weeks, I smiled and laughed. I was having so much fun that I forgot that those nieces were still around. That was, until I heard them call my name. Nieces decided to taunt me into going into the deep end. They said that I was a big chicken for being afraid of going into the deep end of the pool, and that I was a big baby if I didn't go to their side of the pool. I decided to ignore them and continue playing. About a few minutes of teasing, I had enough and left the pool. I guess this didn't sit well with either of the girls, because as soon as I got out of the pool, the younger niece ran inside and locked me out. I ran to the glass door and pulled on it to try and get it open, while the younger niece stuck her tongue out at me from behind the glass. It was then I felt 2 arms wrap around my head and shoulders. The older niece had come from behind me and grabbed me. She started dragging me by the hair away from the door and towards the pool. The next thing I know, I was tossed into the water. I panicked as soon as I realized I was in the deep end of the pool. I tried desperately to stay above the water, but I couldn't. The few times I did, I heard those girls laughing at me. The older niece jumped in the pool and nearly landed on top of me. I felt her hands grab onto my head and try and pull me down. At one point, she was dragging me across the pool. I know this because my knees scraped against the bottom of the pool. I was flailing about, desperately trying to fight her and get above the water. It wasn't until I felt a hand hit something that the other girl finally let me go. By that point, we were both in the shallow end of the pool, so I managed to get my footing and get my head above water. I surfaced to hear the sounds of the lady yelling at me and the older niece howling in pain. The lady charged into the water and yanked me out of the pool. She pushed me into a chair and stared at me with bloodshot eyes. "What the hell is wrong with you? I thought I told your stupid ass not to go into that side of the pool. Now look what you've done," she yelled. The lady pointed at her older niece who had blood running down her nose and she was still crying. Through coughs and tears, I tried to tell her the older niece had thrown me into the pool, but this lady wasn't having any of it. She demanded that I apologize for hitting her niece in the face. I refused to do so and screamed, "No! I hate her!" The lady soon got into my face and started yelling at me. She told me about how I was a stupid girl for not listening to her rules. I had been nothing but trouble for both her and her sweet nieces. Then my mother left me with her because she hated me. I yelled back at her and told her that I wasn't stupid and that her nieces were mean. And I hated them so much and I wished that they would die. The old lady flew into a rage and slapped me across the face for saying that too. I was too shocked to even cry at this point. The lady then took the opportunity to tell me how wrong I was about the nieces, what a horrible child I am. How dare I tattle on her nieces for my mistakes to get them into trouble. How dare I not listen to her directions about the pool. How I dare attack her niece when she was trying to save me. How could I be so ungrateful to our nieces when I owed my life to them? How I could claim that her nieces were so bad children when they were really such sweet and innocent angels. That I would never be as good as her nieces. And because of my behavior, I would never be welcome in her house again. The lady then stormed into her house and called my mom to pick me up. When Mom got there, she was absolutely pissed. She immediately yelled at me for making her get into the trouble with her boss for taking the day off to come get me. She profusely apologized to the lady and her nieces and took me home. As soon as she got home, my mother spanked me and told my dad what happened. My father came home fuming and lectured me about listening to people as well as not being a brat. I was then grounded for a month. I haven't been in that house since that incident, nor have I heard from that lady or her nieces. I drive past that house on my way to work and I get sick to my stomach every time I see it. I've never told my parents about what truly happened that day. I fear they'd simply dismiss it as girls just being kids and me being a brat. I've had years to think about it and I've come up with an answer as to why this happened, and every time I think about it, that creeping feeling always pops into my mind. The feeling that was way more than just an unintended accident by the girls. I can't help but feel like the older niece's plan of throwing me into the pool was on a far more sinister level than her regular bullying. I honestly think that older niece was trying to kill me, and that the younger niece was acting as a leader and a lookout for her. And when that plan went wrong, the younger niece fetched the lady, just so that she could end up getting me into trouble for going to the deep end and hitting her older niece. But I'll probably never know if that was the case. Though it makes me shudder to think about what kind of adults these two girls are probably growing up to be. I'm not a hateful person, but I sincerely hope that lady's liver failed and that her nieces have turned on her. And I hope that both her nieces are rotting away in a prison cell or locked up in some mental institution. Either way, alcoholic asshat and her psychotic nieces, let's not meet again. This is just a little side note from the reader here. Thanks, Wookie. I'd just like to say your mom is a total bitch and she should have never raised kids. And the anger I had during this, that was legitimate. I wasn't acting that. This story really made me angry to read, and I really hope the OP is doing better in life. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time, hopefully.